Greetings, my friends, and the sounder brings us to Thursday. Sometimes I like to call Thursday Turbulence Day, and that's just based on a long time experience where I know that oftentimes, just as you're coming up to the end of the week, and hopefully you're going to make Friday a little bit of a future day, a planning day, a thinking day, oftentimes Thursday is when you hit the turbulence of the week and be prepared for it and know how to do it hard. I mean, really work to get it solved when that turbulence comes on Thursday, because then you want to make sure that the Friday will lead you to a better weekend, and hopefully you've done the deal with the disturbance and the turbulence that hits on Thursday. Just another interesting idea. But today we're going to do the final episode on, hey, here's the truth. Storytelling is the most effective means of communication, and if you want to do better, if you want to do well, if you perhaps want to make your mark in the marketplace today, you better learn how to tell a good story. That's what's coming up. It's more than an interesting idea. It's something that may actually make you some money. Let's see what happens. The program begins right now. Okay, as the title began, yes, the 7 powerful words that may really make your business, your marketing, and the business that you have thrive. So, I'm going to tell you the story about those 7 words. Well, here it goes. One of the persons I've always admired was the writer Elie Wiesel. Now, some of you may not be familiar with him, but he is a man who, as a young boy, survived the Holocaust, but he saw all of the terrible things that happened. But he survived it. But obviously, you are merely a survivor. Obviously, your life is dramatically and drastically changed forever from having gone through that. And he's become a writer and a philosopher and obviously a man of great wisdom, integrity, strength, and courage. And he's been a well-known figure, particularly in the literary and philosophical, and of course in that movement's world. And I would encourage you, Elie Wiesel, if you don't know about him, check it out. And particularly his book called The Night. And boy, it was the night, is one of the descriptions that he has of that particular part of his life. And even when I'm here telling you about that book, I still have memories and kind of visions of some of the images and memories that came to me from reading that book. But I also learned something about him, and this is the story I was told, and it certainly makes sense. It seems that Elie, of course, was on the lecture circuit all the time, and he was well in demand as a speaker and a man who had a presentation and a story to tell. I'm told that he had a very unusual way of beginning his presentations. And what I'm hearing and what I was told, and I wish I would have experienced it personally, but here was the description, that when he had a talk, the people would come into the place where he was going to give that talk, usually, of course, an auditorium and a stage there. And the curtains were open and the house lights were on, but the house lights were down slightly, and the stage lights were almost all off, except that there was a spotlight on a single stool, just a stool sitting there in the middle of the stage. And people came in, and that's all they saw. Finally, the house lights came down, and it was time for the presentation by Mr. Weissel. And I'm told that the moderator, if they had a moderator, and sometimes they didn't, would come forward, stand right in front of the stool, and just simply say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Elie Wiesel." And he'd go off. And the stool was there. And then Elie Wiesel would slowly come on the stage, and he would sit on the stool, and then his eyes would scan the audience, and then he would simply say, "Let me tell you a story." And he began. I want you to think about even the image you got from that little description. Very powerful. He was dressed all in black. No announcement. None of that usual stuff that goes into the speaker. He just simply came forward, and people are wondering what's going to happen. And he says, and here are the 7 powerful words that you need to know. Please, let me tell you a story. Here's the point. He had the audience right then. Everybody was fully present, right to them. And then he began with the story. Now, of course, there were other things in that presentation, but you obviously get the point. He began with a story, and of course, that was kind of the framework for everything he did, because as he was even giving his presentation points and his ideas and perhaps his facts and figures, it was always referencing that story or a story. Now, I just want you to think about that. In fact, one of the things I have decided to do whenever I give a presentation is I have mimicked, and with full mimicry imitation, that's what I do. One time a person said, "Stan, I'd like to introduce you and I'd like to read your resume." And I said, "Please don't. I'd like to make an introduction." And I'd say, "Please don't." "Oh, I have to do that." Well, then I said, "Could you just say, we are privileged today, or we have today, our speaker, Mr. Stan Houston." And then I'm going to come on, and I'm going to stand there in front of the audience, not behind a lectern or pulpit or any of those things. I'm going to just stand there and say, "Let me tell you a story." And that's how I begin. Now, if for some reason they do require a lectern or one of those things I have to stand behind, I don't begin there. I always insist that I have a lavalier mic so that I don't have to stay in one place. I don't have to stand just behind the lectern and with their microphone. I will not speak that way. I want a lavalier microphone so that I can move around. I sometimes remember some years ago when I was actually bringing a guest speaker into our church. And this guy was he'd been a former gang leader. He had been all of those incredible bad guy things. And he was gloriously resurrected. Now he's just a thriving pastor in a large black African ministry and social meeting. And he came to speak at our church, and we had this great big, lectern where the pastor has to sit there and stand there, or whatever he does, but mostly stand there. And I showed that to him, and he had this wonderful line. He said, "You don't expect me to stand in one place, do you?" And I said, "Well, with the present stage, it would work best." And he smiled and said, "Okay, but you have to know that I'm going to roam around from time to time." So I just tell those stories to you to tell you that you need to think about it. If you have any presentation, if you have a pitch, try to make sure they don't go into any of those flowery introductions. Now, one time, what I did when he insisted on doing that, he read it from a piece of paper. He read my introduction, all that stuff. And I came out and I took it away from him and I tore it up. And then I said, "Thank you, but who cares? Who cares that I've got all that stuff? But who cares?" And then I turned to the audience and simply said, "Let me tell you a story." Now, you can understand I had to, first of all, tearing up my resume and saying, "Who cares?" and then looking directly, and my eye contact is piercing. I said, "Let me tell you a story." And I did. Now, I want you, in any of the presentations you have or any of the meetings you have, to understand the power of what I just demonstrated to you. Think about that. Please, let me tell you a story. Now, here's the reason. We are made for stories. We are hardwired to respond to stories. From our earliest days as the human species, that's how we learned. That's how we encountered new ideas. And through the years of our development, we've actually discovered that the part of the brain that is most susceptible and most responsible for people taking action, remember we talked about effective, is stimulated by sound. Not by lights, not by text, but by sound. And so, as I oftentimes say to people who say, "Well, I'm a storyteller," I said, "Are you a story writer or are you a storyteller?" And of course, many times all they really are is a story writer. They just write stories. But there's great power in also being a storyteller. Think of it that way. Again, the message for Thursday. And there's all kinds of other things that we could go into. I could go into if we had time. And if it mattered to you right now, there's all kinds of things we can learn now about how to tell a story, how to make it, how to do all those things. Now, that's a course and a class and a life experience in itself. And I'd be glad to tell you more. But right now, I just want you to understand that I can do that. I'd be glad to do that for you. But the point right now is the most powerful words, at least in the English language, and they are also true of any language, it's just that I don't know the exact words, are very simply, "Please let me tell you a story." And that's the end of the story. Because you now know that's all I did, was tell you a story the whole time. That was the deal. Hey, we'll take a quick break, and then I'll come back for a little goodbye and, of course, a little pitching and promotion work. I'm Stan Houston. The program is Interesting Ideas. We're certainly grateful that you are here to hear our story. telling story is a part of a trademark term that I had many years ago, but I gave it up. It was very simple. I had trademarked personal performance marketing. And the whole idea that we came up with was that there is marketing. But the kind of marketing was not about goods or services or companies or ideas. It was about how to market you. And the way you market you is not by having a brand. It's because you have a performance. Personal performance marketing. Please keep in mind, nobody will buy your stuff until they buy you. Nobody will buy your company until they buy you. That's why you make the difference. You and your story. And the way you engage people is not by pitching them your stuff. The way you engage people is by saying, please, would you tell me your story? Listen for the stories. Don't find the facts, find the stories. And then you'll discover how you can help them, and you may even discover what they really want. So please think about that. I can help you. Just reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com, and we will be glad to put a presentation together for you, your company, your group, because please keep in mind, if you want to be successful in the world today, you must know how to be a storyteller, because storytelling is the only effective means of communication. Well, best and blessings to you. Thank you for your time on this Thursday. Tomorrow we'll see what happens. I'm not sure yet, but something will come. All the best and blessings to you, and bye for now.